Hello everyone, welcome to the Jacksonville History Show. I'm Harry Reagan. On this show, we'll see some treasures from the Historical Society's archives. But first, we'll talk about Old St. Luke's, the historic hospital that is now owned by the Historical Society. Our guests are Lenora Legacy, editor of a book of the Duval Medical Society, and Lauren Swain Mosley, archivist for the Historical Society. Welcome, both of you.
Hi, thank you.
Well, Old St. Luke's is a very special place for us in the Historical Society, but it has a great history with the Duval Medical Society as well. So let's talk a little bit about, we'll talk about your book. Hold up your book.
Okay,
and
fine.
If it's still for sale, I presume.
Yes, Chamblin's Book Mine, both locations, San Marco Bookstore, and then you could also go to dcmsonline.org and order it, right?
Well, we're interested in the Old St. Luke's, as I say, because it's part of what the Historical Society owns and operates. It's where our archives are now. Right. But let's go back, Leora, and talk a little bit about the history. It apparently was not the first hospital in Jacksonville.
That's right. It was Duval County Hospital was the first hospital.
But it was the second one.
So it was the second one, that's right. Now, 1873. And of course, we could not miss in doing the history book, which was Duval County Medical Society began in 1853, and we couldn't miss covering St. Luke's and really all the hospitals. So we have a major chapter in there about the medical institutions. And since St. Luke's is so historic, it is covered in several pages.
And it's an interesting history of all the various hospitals.
Oh, yes, right. And when St. Luke's began, there was the one county hospital and a public hospital. And unfortunately, the people of Jacksonville had a bad connotation of the word hospital, because if they went to Duval County, that meant they were at death's door, and probably there were some caskets being made in an adjoining building, and they would not leave the hospital alive. So when people said, well, we'll take you to the hospital, unlike today when they said, oh yes, let's get there quickly, they didn't want to go. And St. Luke's, being the second hospital, was right there changing that concept from there's no hope to there is hope, and the first modern hospital really in Florida. And so along with St. Luke's and then others that came after it in our medical community, now today something happens immediately. Right. Let's go to the hospital.
And three women kind of instigated this, got the hospital started.
Exactly. Two of them were doctors' wives, Mrs. Susan Hardridge and Mrs. Myra Mitchell, both doctors' wives, and then Mrs. Anna Doggett, her husband, was a judge and a lawyer. And they were very upset and incensed when two travelers who had come to Jacksonville expended all their money to get here to get help for their tuberculosis. We were known as a place with the good climate and everything to recover from that. Well, they died in the streets of Jacksonville because they didn't have money for a hotel room. They could not go to the county hospital. They were not residents. So they died in the streets.
Oh, that was really an unfortunate catch-22, wasn't it?
Exactly.
There was no place for them to.
Right. Right.
So they stepped in to these three women.
Right, and they started, first they formed a relief association where they could find a place if this happened to someone coming to our city. And then in March 11, 1873, a small building, 2 rooms, 4 beds, and they named it St. Luke's Hospital. Not quite sure why the name, but St. Luke's Hospital sounds better than Duval County, and sometimes they attach the word asylum to it. So that sounds a little more inviting. And it was mainly to be there.
Same location?
I'm not sure about that particular location, but
the little 2-room cabin is actually, before they built the building that the archives is in now, they built another hospital. And so the two-room little log cabin thing was actually located around that area, which was
in that vicinity.
Off, like, Church Street
and
near
I think
Market.
it was just a rented building, you know, that they got, and they began. Of course, they had no idea what would happen and how it would grow and the response they would receive.
Absolutely. And Lauren, the Historical Society is very happy to be there now.
We're
and
extremely
you're
happy.
the archivist, and you do a lot of work. Basically, what do y'all do?
Well, we preserve and collect anything regarding the history of Jacksonville. So it could be scrapbooks, photographs, objects, and any sort of information, newspaper articles, anything that we can keep in order to allow people in the future or currently to research the history of Jacksonville. And so we're housed in this wonderful building. We love it.
Yeah.
It's great.
And we're going to talk more about that building and why it's still there and,
Right.
and so forth. And let's take a look at the early version of Old St. Luke's Hospital.
This was the 1878 building. In 1876, they actually had a building ready to go, and before it opened, there was a fire. They said it was arson set by someone, and so a couple years later, thankfully with some insurance money and community assistance, they were able to open then this building. And this is the one that was on Palmetto Street between Monroe and Duval Streets. And this one shows there's the center section here, which still is existing, and that's
Right.
where the archives, and then the north and south wings, which
Which are no longer there.
That's right.
Yeah. Okay, let's go ahead and take a look at another. This is,
Okay,
tell us.
1915 building.
This is another location of St. Luke's Hospital. They left where our archives are on Palmetto
This is
Street.
not on Palmetto.
Correct. It's on 8th and Boulevard, I believe.
Uh-huh. And a
And-
lot of the hospital, things were beginning to happen there around 8th and
Right.
Boulevard,
Right.
right?
So they would have had at this time 2 locations? They would have been on Palmetto and at this?
No, they closed the
I don't
other one
believe
and
so.
transferred over to the new building.
Okay, well, let's see another,
And this is just an extension. You see that,
don't,
oh, excuse me, you
Okay.
see that one, and then you see them building on here.
Okay.
This is 1940.
okay. And
And the center
That-
section
this
of
is
that
what-
This is
original.
it today. Yeah,
This is what you see today.
That's where the archives are. The parking is technically on the other side of the building, but this view is taken from Palmetto Street, looking at, if you remember the first picture we just showed a minute ago, it had the 2 wings that you mentioned, but this is that original core. When the hospital was first built, this actually was the first part that was built and opened. Then they added the wing on within about a year, and then another wing later. So what's left is actually the oldest part of it.
And you mentioned parking, of course. One of
Yes.
the aspects of this building that some people may be familiar with is when you go to a Jaguar game, you can park there.
You can park there, absolutely.
And various events in the arena.
Yeah, and the money from the parking and proceeds go to the Jacksonville Historical Society.
Yeah. And the wings were lost at some stage, but the center part of the hospital was preserved. And
1975.
Let's
yeah.
talk a little bit about, Leroy, how that happened. And
Okay.
who might be, we want to give credit to.
Right. Well, thankfully, when things like this happen, often people do step in, and they were saying, we're going to tear down
Yeah.
Old St. Luke's. And a big campaign began. I know at Duval County Medical Society, the bulletins and all of their publications were filled with articles on Save Old St. Luke's. And local media, the newspapers and everything, wanting to preserve this. And Dr. O.E. Harrell became chairman of a group, Old St. Luke's Restoration Group, and he was able to get Florida U.S. Representative Charles Bennett, most people know his name, involved and on board and to champion the cause. And as a result, they saved the center section and moved it, and we have it today.
Yeah, and Charlie Bennett had his office there for a number of
Right.
years.
Yes.
And I always like to tell people that Charlie Bennett, who was a legendary politician, he made the word politician something that you could be proud of.
Right.
And he had his office there, and he was doing, as illustrated by this building, historic preservation before we knew what historic preservation was.
Right.
Right.
And he went a step further and put his office there after the building was saved.
Yeah, we have a reading room / library located in that, in where his office was. So we call it the Charlie Bennett Reading Room.
Absolutely. Now, if you visit, Lauren, if you visit the location, this complex is right behind the arena, in case people don't know where it is, on the other side of Duval Street from Hubbard House.
Right.
There's another building that's part of the complex.
There is. There's a building right next door to it. It's the Florida Casket Factory. So they used to produce caskets there. At one point, when the sort of production was in full swing, they actually had purchased the hospital and also made that part of the casket factory. So that had to be sort of restored back to what it was before they were producing in there. But we use it, space for additional archives, all sorts of uses, and we're actually going to have a Halloween party there this year, which will be very exciting.
And some people are bemused or perplexed about the juxtaposition of a hospital and a casket factory.
Right.
But it is what it is.
Yeah, it actually it makes a lot of sense, especially before you know, embalming techniques were more advanced and things like that. It was, you know, people got buried a lot quicker, and so it made more sense to have a casket factory.
And it
next
offers
door.
a lot of space for future potential for the Historical Society.
It is. It's actually 15,000 square feet, so it's quite large, and we hope to have a good history center there one day and move the archives into there eventually. And the third floor is this beautiful loft that you can look out to the city and just this big open space. So we hope to have maybe meetings and events up there and maybe use it as a sort of little gallery for the framed images we have in the archives.
So Lyra, tell us a little more about your book, and I guess the Medical Society would be happy about what's happening there now.
Right. Well, this was under the auspices of the Medical Society. I was on staff there for 7 years as the managing editor of their journal. And while I was there, Duval County Medical Society, we call it DCMS, was approached by John Compton, who is the publisher of this book. He's out of Birmingham, Alabama. And he does a lot of this, where he to encourage medical groups to preserve their history, he will come and say, how about doing a book? And of course we had quite a bit of history. We have all those bound journals in our own archives there. And then we had 2 books by Dr. Webster Merritt, who was a great historian, one going all the way back to the 1700s in Florida medical history, and then another one that was done for our centennial. So we had 2 of those books, but those ended about like 1950, 53. And so it was time to capture the history.
So you had a lot of raw material to start with, and then you did a lot of interviews with people who were still still around.
Interviews. I did a lot of researching in primary sources, our journals, and big scrapbooks of materials. Talked with, there are a number of our people who are living, still living, our past presidents that I talked with, and it was really quite fascinating. It was a little over 2-year process.
Wow. Okay.
And of course the DCMS board had to approve the project, which they did, and we started the writing then in 2010, and then the book was published in 2012. And so we're really quite pleased. This is the 160th year of DCMS. So the book reflects, just like we have on the cover, the book reflects the medical history and also Jacksonville. I mean, you know, because you go back to 1853 and there's a lot that, you know, we cover all of that history in the book. So we're quite pleased with that, pleased that we have so much in there about the hospitals, and one of the ways that the publisher makes sure that you can publish the book, because that's expensive and we're a nonprofit, he was able to get a large group of our medical community and medical groups, the physicians and their medical groups, they purchased pages, profile pages, in the back part of the book to help fund the whole project. And what's exciting is people see the history of it, then go, oh, well, there's my doctor. Oh, I go there, you know.
Right,
So
right.
it has a kind of, you know, double appeal.
So what are you doing now?
Right now, supposedly I'm semi-retired, but I haven't had too much time to really think about what that means. I am a freelance writer and editor, so I get involved in a number of projects, and I'm also teaching online. I'm teaching a composition class right now. In fact, after I finish with this, I have to go and see what they've done in their revised papers. But so I'm staying. I taught before we came to Jacksonville in 1986. And for about 18 years I was an educator. And then I switched and became a communicator, and mainly in medical communications. I worked for the Florida Medical Association, for the Association of Clinical Endocrinologists, American Association of Clinical Endocrinologists, and then Duval County Medical Society. And in between, here and there, worked a little with Nemours, you know, just, so it's mainly been medical communications. So that's why this was so fascinating.
Well, Leora Legacy and Lauren Swain Mosley, thank you very much.
Thank you.
And the History Show will be right back after this break.